Hey there. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome back. It's another Red Pill Religion podcast. Red Pill Religion, where amongst the things we say are that politics, culture, and religion always go together and cannot be separated. So you need to get used to it. Please support our work if you can here on our new channel on Red Pill Religion. We have, for a wide variety of reasons, changed channels that I'll talk about in a little bit. But please notice we have a new channel. Hit the like, hit the subscribe, hit the bell to get notifications. We'll see if those work. And we are starting from fresh, as if it's a new year and it's a new Red Pill Religion with a new attitude, a little more laid back, a little less controversial. In any case, in these days of social media censorship, please remember you can always find us on redpillreligion.com. redpillreligion.com, where every day we post articles and videos by us and others. If you'd like to see this type of content continue, challenging dominant cultural narratives, please hit the PayPal tip jar. The Bitcoin tip jar is especially appreciated, and Patreon. We were planning to start a new Patreon, but it's just like with all the controversy over Patreon right now, we're not sure it's the right moral or ethical thing to do. We are sticking on PayPal with those of us, or with Patreon for those of us who are still on it, who are our subscribers who are still on it, but we do prefer PayPal for now, or especially Bitcoin. And we could use the work. We are continuing slowly but surely bringing new volunteers in, finding new things to do. If you like this kind of innovative content, it's not like anything you get anywhere else right now, please support us. And again, please subscribe to us. Also, if you're interested, shoot us a note. We can still let people into the free Discord chat room because some funding is a problem right now. And, you know, maybe we'll even start. We're just going to talk about politics today. So maybe we're going to talk about some of this funding stuff a little bit first. But first, everybody should know we have been joined. Everybody say hi to Deflating Atheism. Say hello, Deflating.
Hello, everyone.
And please, please do make sure to go and subscribe to his channel. Now, we felt like talking about politics today, so that's what we're going to probably talk about. I'm just going to start to lean in with, Subscribestar. We are on Subscribestar. And we had good hopes for this platform, just like we used to be on Maker Support before Maker Support was destroyed. I don't know if people realize that these crowdfunding sources are being interfered with openly. Jordan Peterson and Dave Rubin, have announced that they're leaving Patreon. Sargon, who really doesn't deserve people feeling sorry for him, but nevertheless, Sargon of Akkad and others are being censored, and others by Patreon, and others are simply leaving. MasterCard is getting into the game.
Yeah, PayPal has done its own share of the deplatforming. So
PayPal has done deplatforming. MasterCard is involved in the deplatforming game. All this stuff is coming down. Subscribestar looked like they were going to be good, but right now we've been on hold with them for about 2 weeks, maybe a little less than 2 weeks. No, it's been more than 2 weeks, actually. And, they tell us we're on hold, and it's not because of us. Don't complain to Subscribestar, by the way. Don't complain to them. They're having trouble from the banks and from PayPal and from all the different companies that process payments that don't want independent voices like this out here. I'm just going to give a little rant, too. One of the reasons we're doing a new channel is the previous channel that we were on was only at 3,000 or so subscribers. That had been our second channel. Our first channel had gotten multiple suspensions, and so we had to move. I had moved the old channel we've been on for the last year and a half or so was my old men's rights Dean Esme backup channel that I had kept a bunch of other stuff on, and we just used it because it was available. And that also used to have more subscribers, then got a bunch of, mystery subscriptions, subscribers disappearing, and shadow banning a bunch of places, and people not getting notifications, and still got BS strikes. But it was time to move on. So we're going to see if 2019 we can move this. I'd like to see how fast we can get to 1,000. Well, I'd like to see how fast we can get to 500 subscribers, and I'd like to see how fast we can get to 1,000. But in the meantime, I had planned a new Patreon for this year and maybe to be open on Subscribestar, and it's all on hold because nobody knows. It's very Orwellian that the people who control our money now want to control what we do with our money, isn't it?
Yeah. And these multi-billion-dollar financial institutions and multi-billion-dollar organs of the media are suppressing poor as dirt content creators like us because they are part of the hashtag resistance. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, it hurts my heart, as my biological mother used to say. It hurts my heart because, you know, I've been on the internet since the 80s. I'm one of the really, really old ancient nerd types, you know, that you know, you used to find at Radio Shack back when Radio Shack actually meant something. Actually, the real nerds always made fun of Radio Shack, but never mind. It's the point is made, and I really thought the internet was going to be this beacon. Like no one could censor the internet, no one could control the internet. So I helped build the internet and evangelize the internet to people. And I've just been shocked over the last really more like the last 10 years. I saw it start coming down pretty bad in the late 2000s, actually, even before Obama was elected, to be honest, because there was some fishy stuff starting in the blogosphere under George W. Bush. It did get worse over Obama. It got even worse the second 4 years of Obama, though. But it's still, even without Obama, and I'm not trying to blame Obama especially, but I'm just saying, because even under Trump, it's accelerating. And it's frightening. It really is. I mean, I know some people who've managed to carve out niches and make money. Many of them have obviously made a deal with the devil, whereas others are just managing to fly under the radar. But it's like, really, I don't know. I guess I'm just ranting now, but I can't believe how controlled the internet is. I didn't think this was possible.
I mean, I remember Usenet in the 90s. It was understood that you were in the Wild West. I mean, I remember people who used to tell newbies that they should mix together chlorine and bleach and use that to clean their floor or whatever. It was understood that if you took anything seriously, it was your own fault, you know? And nowadays, if you make like something that's slightly edgy or something, the entire carpet can be pulled out from under you. This is not the future that I or pretty much anyone else imagined.
No, and the only thing we can do is make people aware of the fact that financial institutions, banks, entities like MasterCard, PayPal, and all of these are actively interfering with free speech. It's going to drive most people, a lot of people, I think, to cryptocurrency. Although personally, I don't believe cryptocurrency is the panacea a lot of people think it is. Finally, joining us is the sneaky Russian bot, Comrade Dmitry. Say hello, Dmitry.
Привет, I am the Russian bot, always interfering in your elections to rig it in our favor. I was gonna say though, yeah, good luck with cryptocurrencies. Venezuela is learning the hard way from trying to transition to that.
Well, I mean, it's already a given. I don't know if you guys have seen. I mean, the state of Ohio is accepting Bitcoin for its tax payments now. People are using crypto more and more mainstream institutions are accepting crypto. But see, here's the thing: Bitcoin was sold to us that it was untraceable, and that's not true. It's completely traceable. And a lot of these other, vendors are coming along offering their cryptos, claiming they're untraceable. I'm not sure I believe any of them. I'm also not, and I don't. I'm sure I don't believe claims that they can not be manipulated, right? Like
the price can be somehow fixed. Yeah.
I was gonna say if it's online, the government has access to it. They'll find a way.
if I'm China or the United States or whoever's got enough money and say, well, I want to control Bitcoin or I want to control one of its competitors. Fine, I will spend a few $1 billion and buy a bunch of their coins and just hold on to them for a while and begin manipulating the market with selective releases and buys because you've got the power to do that. So, I mean, it's not a panacea to stop people from being controlled.
Exactly.
But it is where a lot of us are going to be going. I mean, I'm amazed PayPal hasn't shut us down yet. I think Patreon only hasn't shut us down because they never gave us a chance to hit many subscribers in the first place. They have suspended us before for no good reason on Patreon. Blah, 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 blah. Speaking of which, though, more amusing stories. Rob, I'm sorry, Deflating Atheism. You had a rant about Vanity Fair.
Yes. So let me give the backstory to this because earlier today I was going to be awake and I had a good night's sleep. So I just hit up Dean Esme and I said, "Sup, WID," and he said nothing. I said, "Well, what are you doing today?" He says, "Well, I have a discussion." That fell through. But so anyway, he said, "Well, anyway, I have this night free. You want to do something?" I said, "Actually, I have a rant about Vanity Fair magazine, which I read at the gym, believe it or not. But it was something I always wanted to do for my channel, but I was never really good with those kinds of, talk to the camera videos. I always kind of choke up with those things. So we agreed to do it, and the irony is that as impromptu as this hangout is for me, I have never been so prepared for a hangout before in my life because I ran out in the rain to my car, retrieved the magazines, I put in the bookmarks, I got the highlighter, I highlighted the relevant passages. So I'm like set. I've never been this set before.
And you ran through the cold and the wet to do it. Okay.
I am that committed to providing quality content for my viewers that I ran 15 feet in a slight drizzle to my car. So you cannot doubt my commitment, okay?
All right. Well, then I salute you, sir. You make me proud to be an American. Now, show us what you have.
Okay. Well, this is the this is November 2018 issue of Vanity Fair. And so it is the new establishment list. Okay, who gets pride of place here? Actually, on like page 3, it's Alexandria
Cortez.
Yeah, with an extremely flattering photo, by the way.
He actually looks pretty good in that.
Yeah, I'm going to make some Democrats mad if they're trying to deliver paydays for Wall Street donors, but that doesn't mean I'm going to burn the house down. So yeah, she's shaking things up. She's part of the new establishment. And it's ironic that they feature a socialist in a magazine that no other magazine slobbers over the 1% or the 1% of the 1% quite as much as Vanity Fair. So I thought that was ironic. Now in the first page editorial, they talk about the articles, and so they say the A-list, in case the viewer doesn't know about this, A-list, like the new establishment, offers a snapshot of a moment with signs of things to come. Blah blah blah. The big tech companies still bestride the narrow world like lumbering colossuses, but even they have been called to account for the role they've played, whether wittingly or worse, unwittingly, in the unraveling of democratic institutions, the undermining of a free and accountable press, and the tainting of codes of civility and decency. Now, when they talk about the undermining of a free and accountable press, do you think they're talking about the active efforts to stamp out conservative content on social media? Is that what they're referring to? No, what they're referring to is Donald Trump saying mean things about millionaires. That's what they call about the attacks on the free and accountable press. So exactly. I thought that was funny in and of itself.
Well, and the thing of it is, the press bullies everyone. Like, look how badly they slandered PewDiePie and all sorts of people.
Yeah, exactly. Now,
and it's like they're saying, "Oh, it's okay when we do it, but not for you."
Yeah, I mean, PewDiePie is a pretty successful for a social media guy, but still, I mean, he's nothing compared to these guys. It continues, and the tainting of codes of civility and decency, and the work of the taciturn G-man in our #1 spot remains the wildest card in establishment politics. Not to add to the burden on his shoulders, but he could end up seriously disrupting the 2019 list. Now, I didn't know who they were talking about. Could it be the leader of the free world, the most powerful man in the world? Would he be #1 on the new establishment list? Well, as it turns out, he doesn't warrant a mention. Not in 100 slots. Donald Trump does not warrant a mention. But number one, and my jaw hit the floor when I saw who was the number one disruptor and who was going to shake things up in 2019. My jaw hit the floor. Robert Mueller. That's who they're pinning their hopes on. He got number one on the new establishment list. He's going to shake things up in 2019.
He hasn't done shit since like May of 2017 when he was first appointed to the special counsel investigation.
Exactly. These people are deluded. So let me just read the blurb. Just okay. Age 74, Occupation Special Counsel, Department of Justice, previous rank 6. Evidence of institutional inscrutability, the unofficial hero of the anti-Trump resistance.
Oh my God.
Trump's resistance, and millionaires and billionaires, and they're the anti-Trump resistance.
Well,
and
this guy.
Here's the thing. Let's pretend you're a liberal lefty guy still, but you're actually just a working stiff.
Yeah.
And get by. These people don't give a crap about you. They do not. They do not. They do not. And don't think I'm telling you that I think all the Republicans love me either. I'm not saying that. But I mean, man, how can these people be more smug? It is exactly like what you're saying. It is millionaires, ass-kissing billionaires, basically.
Yeah.
And what? Go ahead.
I was gonna say, and the thing of it is, none of the working class in the middle class, they don't really care about this whole like Russia collusion bullshit.
No.
As long as the economy's doing good and we're not in some pointless foreign wars, which Donald Trump is pretty good in getting us out of, with Syria and Afghanistan. No one's going to care about Russia.
Yeah, we're still in a world where we're still in
soaring and unemployment is at historic lows. So I think America.
We are still looking at an America where people under 40 especially, we have a large crop of mostly men in their 50s who are having trouble finding work because they've been obsoleted and outsourced out. And we've got a whole generation under 35 especially that like nobody can get a full-time job with benefits.
Yeah.
They are hopping from, they're taking 2 or 3 jobs here and there, part-time jobs here and there. This is happening in large swaths of the country. Trump hasn't fixed that. He's made it better for some people in that class of people, though, and that is what they care about. And there's still a lot to go. And I just don't see what the liberal, the progressive Democrats, the Cortez wing of the Democrats. I mean, I give the Democrats in my state some credit. They ran on some bread and butter issues involving jobs and clean water and good roads.
Yeah.
That was intelligent of Democrats. I don't see anything coming out of the elite in the Democratic Party that says anything that the average working guy cares about.
Yeah. Well, with the improving state of the economy, socialism is the answer to the question that no one is asking. I think it's ridiculous even to float. But what Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez brings is some energy and youth to a basically rotting Democratic Party. So they want her on board and they want to suck her energy into the party. Yeah.
Right. But here's the thing, though. I mean, no one wants open borders, which is what she's all for.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I mean, they don't want the substance of her message. They just want the fact that it gets more people of the far left on board the Democratic Party.
Right. If she could moderate her positions and like drop the open borders delusion, then she could be more quickly. But I don't think she's going to do that anytime soon.
Well, the far left won't let her do that. But yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. I've actually seen a Jake Hobbin, which is like a communist website, and it actually denounced Ocasio-Cortez as like a reactionary because she's quote unquote moderating her position on many issues.
Well, that's one of the big problems with radical leftists in general is they always wind up turning on each other. They always wind up turning on each other in serious ideological purity tests on each other. Not that right wingers don't do that either, but it looks different on the right if you observe them over the years. But yeah, I mean,
let me finish reading the Robert Mueller thing, and then I'll move on because I have some things in the next issue, and you will be gobsmacked. You will be amazed I'm kind of surprised I haven't heard anyone else talk about this because this is a major publication. So, okay. So the unofficial hero of the anti-Trump resistance, an avatar of American institutionalism, may or may not satisfy the appetite of an electorate searching for answers about what really went down between the Trump campaign and Russia. Spoiler alert, nothing. But Mueller and his nearly 36 indictments against people who are buying Facebook ads and guilty pleas is proof of the power of law. So he was #1 on the Vanity Fair new establishment list. Okay.
Oh, go ahead.
No, say what you were going to say.
I was going to say I heard that that most of the people he indicted were not for alleged collusion for Russia, but over things like bank fraud and whatnot.
Yeah, well, the thing that he got manifest for was from like 2004. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it was actually involved with the same company that John Podesta was with. So
exactly.
Why isn't he going after John Podesta too? Like, what the fuck?
Well, trust me, I'm going to have more questions like this. But this is the December issue of Vanity Fair, so this came 1 month later. So, this is what's this called? The 2018 Hall of Fame. So these are the most consequential people of 2018. Now let me read the first page editorial for this. We like to think that the news moves more quickly than ever now, but that's just the hubris of presentism. It would be hard to win that argument with a reader during, say, World War II or the Civil Rights Movement or Watergate. Your interest in Watergate is not about principles at all, because we just had Watergate times 10, and there's been a complete media blackout about Spygate and FISAgate, okay? So don't tell me it's about principles. But yeah. all it was a Republican that time, so it's okay with that.
Yeah, can't talk about any of that.
Yeah, they've been completely derelict in their duties as journalists, and instead they give us this horseshit, which is what will really gobsmack you when I tell you who gets #1. Okay, but let me or Watergate. That said, the year's end is an opportune moment to reflect on some of the people who rose up and made themselves heard amid the din.
Oh God!
Who do you think is #1? Any guesses?
Okay, wait a minute. Okay, it's not Ocasio-Cortez. Can't be. So. Oh, God.
This would be an easy question. It's the most important person of 2008.
Elizabeth Warren. That's what I'm going to say.
Sarah's young.
Stormy Daniels.
Oh, damn it. Why did you guess that?
Stormy Daniels.
In a photograph by very famous photographer Annie Leibovitz, she's riding her horse. Now, you know that part of the church service where they all go silent and you could kind of offer your own prayers in your head? Well, I think this is the time we should all go silent and allow the viewer at home to offer their own jokes in their head. So
oh, my God. Please.
Yes. Stormy Daniels riding a horse. Just let those jokes come unbidden to your mind, yes.
Isn't she still like stripping for money and whatnot because she got screwed over by Michael Avenatti?
Here's the thing, too. I don't care. I'm not going to virtue signal anymore. If you're a professional prostitute, well, okay, wait a minute. I don't know. Is it fair to call her a professional prostitute?
Well, she's a porn star, so.
She is a porn star. Okay, that makes you a professional prostitute. And actually, she came up in Hollywood, which is nothing but sleaze and sex. There's no reason to believe her allegations. She's not. I've seen stories like in Vox, they had something say Stormy Daniels is redefining what it is to be a sex abuse scandal survivor. I'm like, no, she doesn't.
It was consensual.
She is an embarrassment to anybody who was ever actually sexually abused.
It was consensual sex, according to her.
Yeah, and that doesn't matter. And also, this was apparently unearthed by the Mueller probe. And what does this even have to do with Russian collusion?
Absolutely jack shit.
Yeah, exactly. That's how this whole thing was brought to the surface. Like, what the fuck?
I see. The thing is that who reads Vanity Fair? Honestly, who's it for? I suppose if we did some market demographic research, we would find that it is for. I bet we will find that Vanity Fair is mostly read by what I like to call our Mandarin class. It's for people who work at big corporations who want to climb the corporate ladder, or who think they're going to get into some other glitzy high class job, who are either in some kind of glitzy high upper class job or strive very much to be.
Yes,
it's the kind of people who work for like Council on Foreign Relations and shit like that.
Yeah, I'll tell you that it skews old. It skews old. And it's kind of like, you know, in award shows when Robert De Niro comes out and he says F Trump, and they all do their kind of requisite anti-Trump bits. My own view on that has changed because I've come to realize those people have a gun to their heads when they're doing that, because they have to impress all their cohorts, and if they don't do it, then all of a sudden their status falls.
Well, yeah, look at Kanye West.
View of that kind of behavior.
Yeah. Look at Kanye West since he's like come out as, you know, pro-Trump and wearing his MAGA hat. Like, he's gotten a lot of hatred from not only just the celebrity community in Hollywood, but, you know, from the so-called leadership of the black community. Like,
yeah. And they will never say anything so racist about a black person as
they called him the N-word and Uncle Tom and all kinds of
well, you notice these, the people most likely to throw out racial epithets like that are the ones who most often use them. It's ridiculous. Charlie Reed in the comments says the problem is the alternative to Trump is worse. I'll give you that. I'll tell you, I probably like Trump better than Charlie does, but I'm not ready to drink. I've never drunk the Kool-Aid on. I thought he would win, and I've enjoyed some of his antics and some of the things he's done, but I've never drunk the Kool-Aid. I don't think he's a messiah or anything. But yeah, how can you not look at his opposition right now and just go, ugh?
I was going to say, what
wants any of that?
The opposition essentially just offers open borders and loose immigration and endless wars
and rage. Yeah, and self-righteousness, and it's ridiculous. I guess, and I'm crediting Democrats in my area, even though I had specific issues with some of what they were doing or planning. I could look, and the Democrats here were talking things that made sense.
Yeah.
They were talking about bringing in jobs and alternative energy and fixing roads and cleaning up bad water and you know, and helping schools and helping hospitals, which is, you know, there's issues as to whether their plans are the right plans all the time, but they were running on something.
Yeah.
You know, at the national level, the Democrats are running on Orange Man bad, and it is pathetic.
Well, I think the fault is the Republicans. When the Republicans weakened the unions in the 80s and 90s, they deprived the Democrats of having anything sane to base their party around. So now they have identity politics and Orange Man bad.
Well, and wouldn't you think that they would actually go back to that point of, you know, strengthening the unions if the Republicans?
See, the thing is that, I mean, and actually I believe in trade unions. I don't believe in government employees having trade unions. I believe in trade unions, and I would actually think that, you know, a lot can be done to improve them. I know a lot of my conservative friends lose their minds when I say I'm pro-union, but I am. You just need sensible policies to balance management against workers and not. And by the way, under Ronald Reagan, of all people, Ronald Reagan said, I believe in trade unions. And his Secretary of Commerce, I can't remember his name, had been a union guy and a corporate boss. Well, he had actually been a corporate boss, but he was union friendly. And he said, look, sometimes a union's got to strike. And sometimes the corporate bosses have to let them so that they'll come back to the table. But, you know, the unions that work are the ones who want to work, who know, unions and management who both know we need to make a profit, can negotiate. That was, you know, that was under Reagan, for goodness sakes.
Yeah.
I think there is a place for trade unions. I really do. And we should bring them back, especially wherever there are big corporate jobs, you know, like Walmart.
Yeah.
But all that aside, that's not what Democrats do. They've embraced this identity politics stuff, this ethnic identity politics, this hatred of religion, hatred of tradition, hatred of white people, hatred of Christians, hatred of men, hatred of men. It's brutal, and it does nothing for anybody.
Yeah, this is kind of another point I wanted to make is that I'm going to presume to speak to you since I think I know you pretty well. Is that neither Max nor I think I could speak for all three of us. None of us are liberals, but we all have some sort of admiration for the ostensible liberal principles of compassion for the sick and compassion for the poor and tolerance and all those good things. We disagree with liberals on the policy basis, but we like those ostensible values of liberals.
All the policies, not even all the policies.
Yeah, yeah. Now, riddle me this. What does Michael Avenatti have to do with any of that shit? What does Robert Mueller have to do with any? What does Stormy Daniels, #1 most important person of 2018, Stormy Daniels, have to do with all those good?
I was gonna say, I hate to say it, but the one person they brought up that has to do with any of those principles you mentioned is Alexandria Cortez.
But like I said, it's a complete sham that they're even pretending that they're interested in socialism.
That's true.
That's my opinion, but I don't think. I think the Democratic Party is basically this corporatist entity right now, and for some reason they've marshaled the useful idiots of social justice and far leftism to do their bidding, which is what seems so bizarre to me, because the words leftist, the far left, and liberal, those don't mean anything anymore. What they mean are people who attack the people who stand in the way of the Democrat machine. That's the only reason Avenatti is on the pedestal, is because he presents a problem for people who stand in the way of the Democrat machine. We are people who stand in the way of the Democrat machine, so we're the ones getting censored and stuff. And so it is completely absurd. The left is basically, and I hate that term now because it's completely meaningless. It is authoritarianism. It is authoritarianism, and it's people who stand in the way of the machine.
Totalitarian, yeah, it is. And the news cycle is part of it, of course. A. Brownies makes a good point here. Says the news is trauma-based mind control. It is. It's negative emotional and manipulation. It's where the term triggered actually comes from, trauma-based. No, you're right. I did research for years and advocacy on for victims of child abuse, and I've studied the stuff on trauma-based mind control, and he's right. The whole idea of being triggered comes from people using trauma on children to experiment on them psychologically and to develop what are called triggers. If you read about that MK Ultra stuff, it's real. So yeah. Go search up MK Ultra. I am convinced I have met at least 3 people in my lifetime who probably were influenced not by the CIA necessarily, but by some variant of trauma-based mind control. And yeah, I would actually agree the news is manipulative that way. It's especially now. It's always been sensationalized, but it's totally manipulated now.
Yeah. But by the way, I often see pop up because I was researching the topic about a year ago, but I still see pop up in my recommends an Elzagate video, usually with like 13 million views. YouTube cannot get the Elzavate videos under control, but they're really good at censoring conservative content.
I don't even know what Elzavate is now. What is it?
It's a very disturbing rabbit hole. But yeah, they're videos that use beloved children's characters like Spider-Man and Elsa from Frozen, and it has them doing these very bizarre sex and violent things. And it plays on all these primordial fears, and there's children put in danger, and there's blood, and so I mean, I think it's there as like a means of grooming children for abuse, and
that's disturbing.
Somehow they game the algorithms of YouTube, because like if you give a little kid an iPad and it has like a video they like, they'll just keep watching it. It will just go on, and the parent won't even know what they're watching. So these videos literally get like 13 million views, and no one knows who makes them. That's the bizarre thing, and they feature all the sex, and it's designed to prey on kids. It's designed to game the YouTube algorithms to get maximum views, and no one knows who makes them. No one can do anything to prevent them, apparently.
Well, it's not only that. It's like if you go on Twitter, you'll see them like censoring all kind, and disbanding many like mainstream conservative voices, and yet you'll see like actual like pedophiles, sharing information on there, and you'll see like actual fucking ISIS accounts.
Exactly.
It's just crazy.
Yeah.
Hate speech for thee, but not for me.
Yeah, so it's very bizarre, because when I'm talking with the anti-Trumpers these days, I hate to use the word, I really feel like I'm talking to people who are brainwashed. It seems like these people who say, well, Trump is a racist, and you're like, okay, what did Trump ever say that was racist? And they can't answer that question, and you can offer he's racist, and that's not sufficient to. They really
they'll quote things that you could call borderline racist, like he once complained about the Mexican judge. Although, to be honest, if you looked at the case, the fact that the judge was of Mexican descent might have influenced him. But I mean, still, he did say that. And when he said the way he said these people are animals. Now, the truth is, he was talking about MS-13, but they quoted him out of context on that. That's what I believe happened there. Because he was talking about MS-13, not Mexicans in general.
Yeah. And also when he referred to Haiti as a shithole,
he was correct about Haiti, straight up. He just was correct about Haiti. It is.
Yeah, but that's the problem. There's truth to it, though. I mean, are you not going to say that a country like North Korea is a shithole? Or are you going to say it's a true communist utopia?
It's horrible what's been done to Haiti. Actually, I'm really hoping the people of Haiti see some justice in the next few years for a lot of things we've done that have been done to them. What?
Yeah, weren't like the Clintons involved in like overthrowing one of their governments and like causing it to be a shithole that it is today?
Yeah, absconded with the relief money, and a lot of people say that there's evidence that they abetted the trafficking of children from Haiti.
We don't know that's for sure, but I mean, it sure doesn't look good. I mean, a lot of money got poured down into Haitian relief, especially after they had the hurricane and stuff down there, and almost none of it got spent on Haitians. Yeah. And that's a real problem. And there are people doing investigations now. Rumor is we might see more investigations on that starting in the next year or two. To be frank with you, we'd better.
Yeah.
I was not a Trump supporter. At this point, I can't support any Democrat, but if he campaigned on certain specific things, and that included mentioning this situation in Haiti. There's been all this talk about rounding up pedos and pedo gang leaders. If we don't see major movement on all that in 2019, I don't know if I'm going to vote for him in 2020, because I'll feel like we're being played, huh?
Pedophile rings are dropping like flies. There's been more pedophiles and more pedophiles arrested and more pedophile rings disbanded in 2 years of Donald Trump than in 8 years of Obama.
Well, that's one theory that's touted around, that the reason why the media just like despises Donald Trump so much is because they feel threatened that he's going to enclose them in.
Yeah, well, why is keeping the southern border, why is keeping the free trafficking of people along the southern border such an important issue for them? You have to wonder.
I don't get, when like I forget what the percent is, like 75 to 80% of all the migrant children who come through there are like discarded as soon as the people come there.
They're raped. They're sold into sexual slavery. I mean.
Yeah, and also that's why Trump did the whole migrant family separation, because it's like you don't know if these people are actually their families or not.
Exactly.
Controversial, I'll admit, but you don't know. I mean, and they were getting better than what I got in foster care, so like I don't understand.
Yeah.
A Brownies asks in the chat. He says, "Are you going all Q on me, Max? Ha ha. I hope so, but I'm not holding my breath." We talk about Q and QAnon now and then in here because I have been watching it for more than a year. I've been watching it, and we might even do another show about it. We've even had Dustin Nemos on. I am a skeptic of QAnon. Not that I don't think QAnon is real or that everything in there is. Some of it is clearly real. I think people following QAnon who are just believing are foolish. But I think there's a lot of truth in QAnon. That's truly what I think there.
Well,
and I think it's a sign of our crumbling media empire. I mean, the fact that something like QAnon could make as much inroads as it has, and it's made huge inroads with a lot of people across the country, is, proof that we're descending into what looks like a third world country, because you've got this controlled mainstream media that nobody believes at all anymore, except, the most fevered, nuts still believe CNN, MSNBC, Fox. But most people don't believe any of them anymore, and they shouldn't. Now we've got alternative media and efforts to censor alternative media. It's really this is like the country in the middle of a soft civil war.
Yeah. And Trump is absolutely correct when he calls the media, not the institution of the press in the abstract. We're talking about the actual media that has come down to us through historical accident. He is absolutely right to call that the enemy of the people. And they're like, oh no, Trump is saying mean things about these millionaires. He's suppressing free speech. No, the real suppression of free speech is on our end.
I agree.
It's absurd.
And I agree too. And I like what Steve Turley said about like when Alex Jones was, thrown in the digital gulag. They should like sign a press petition to get Jim Acosta back, seated right next to Alex Jones, because there's no fucking difference between the crazy conspiracy theories of Jim Acosta and the whole Russia collusion and Alex Jones.
Alex Jones is literally at least as credible as CNN at this point. At this point, and that doesn't mean I'm an Alex Jones true believer. I never have been. Although I figured out some time ago quite a bit of what they made fun of him for, he was telling the truth on. Mm-hmm. And this, I mean, I could go into why I still don't trust Alex Jones, but he's at least as credible as they are.
Okay. I have a point I want to make, and then I have a profounder point I want to make. But yeah, like talking about QAnon, it's when you read a mainstream media article about QAnon, and they come out in these spates, and it's always the same thing. Always within the first few words of the article, you will find a word like debunked or discredited or fiction or an outrageous conspiracy theory.
Well, it's like whenever like someone on the right brings up something like uranium-1, which if you're familiar with it, it's like basically Hillary Clinton sold the Russian Federation under Putin 20% of our uranium. And then as soon as Trump brings this up and other figures on the right bring this up, it's like quote unquote debunked by Snopes and all these other media outlets. If you dig a little deeper, you'll see it's 100% true. Mm-hmm. They're having investigations on it right now.
That's what's so ridiculous, in that it's not enough for the media to tell us the facts. They have to tell us what our opinions are. So they always say QAnon, and this goes to the more profound point I want to make. It always goes to QAnon is a crazy conspiracy theory. Now, I blanked out here, but yeah,
it's like neurolinguistic programming. They are telling you what to think while they're telling you the story.
And it's so transparent. It's so transparent. Now, do you want to know what a crazy conspiracy theory? A crazy conspiracy theory is that Donald Trump conspired with the Russians to throw the 2016 election. The crazy conspiracy theory is that Brett Kavanaugh was a serial rapist in high school. That was being reported in the press. Yeah. Brett Kavanaugh, it was a serial rapist in high school. You cannot feed me that and then say, oh, but QAnon is a crazy conspiracy theory. Okay.
This is all also based on, I think, the cultural assumption that these cultural elites in specific, they've brought it in with their mother's milk. They've studied the idea of psychology so long, and frankly, they have a universe that is ultimately subjective, non-theistic.
Yeah.
And so they think everything is about human psychology.
Mm-hmm.
And so that no matter what you're saying, it doesn't matter what the facts are, they're going to psychoanalyze you. And they're just going to assume that something is mentally deficient or wrong with anybody who disagrees with them. And they actually thought that would work, like the just sort of presuppositional language, you could reprogram the whole population. Well, it works on some people, but most people, it seems like now, are just kind of vomiting it back up, and the media doesn't know what to do. Nobody likes or respects them anymore.
This is my more profound point, is that there is underway there's a huge credibility problem now with the press, and the peasants are revolting. Because I'm not offering any opinion on the topics, but when the people who know, when the opinion makers tell us, vaccines are safe, or anthropogenic global warming or climate change rather is a real thing, normal people are going to be, but wait, aren't you the same people who told me that Brett Kavanaugh was a serial rapist in high school? I mean, that was the correct thing to believe. And now you want me to believe that vaccines are safe and anthropogenic climate change is a real thing? So I'm not offering my own opinion. I'm not saying either of those things. I'm not saying that vaccines aren't safe or climate change isn't real. But the thing is that there's now this huge credibility problem, and they've just completely shot their wad. And so for people like me, now I listen to Alex Jones. I'm going to be honest. I think I speak for a lot of people. When he talks about things, I'm a lot more accepting of ideas I was not accepting of a year ago.
Well, yeah, and I think as long as you're like, you go in there like with a grain of salt, you're good.
It's like a year ago, I would have scoffed at the idea of chemtrails or something, or basically a lot of conspiracy theories, or like what Owen Benjamin is talking about now. I still think it's a little nutty that the moon landing was faked, but nowadays I'm like, okay, I'm willing to listen.
I'm the same way, dude. I'm done even laughing at flat earthers. I've invited one to come on. I just want to hear it, whatever it is. A moon landing conspiracy. I mean, we have entered an era where, by the way, just 5 years ago, you were crazy and kooky if you talked about UFOs, but now it's okay to talk about UFOs and alien invasions again. Okay, so notice that shift has occurred. It's okay to talk about that. I mean, maybe not believing the lizards are in charge or anything, but believing in UFOs and aliens is mainstream. Even prominent skeptic organizations have said that's okay, but we're still crazy to think anything else, right? It's been approved. It's been socially approved. We can talk about UFOs again, but we can't talk about questioning other things. I mean, they still treat you like you're crazy if you think Lee Harvey Oswald acting alone did not kill the president, Kennedy. If you think there was a conspiracy there, they'll still call you crazy on that one. Even though the evidence that keeps coming out of the archives just makes it look worse and worse and worse. If you ask me at this point, there's no way Lee Harvey Oswald acting alone shot and killed President Kennedy. I simply can't believe that anymore. I've seen enough. And so now somebody tells me they've faked the moon landing. Well, that's hard because I grew up in the 60s and I remember the moon landing stuff on television, basically not the moon landing perfectly, but things like it, the early Apollo program, and my dad taking me to NASA, and the astronauts were my heroes. And I watched that great HBO series by Tom Hanks, From Earth to the Moon, and movies like The Right Stuff, and astronauts were my hero. But guess what? I mean, what evidence do I have that it wasn't just Hollywood trickery?
Wow. Suppose a mirror on the moon, the reflector or whatever. I don't know. I'm not an expert, but I'm just more receptive. But more receptive is what I'm saying, because I don't know who the hell to believe anymore. And when somebody speaks to me from authority, I'm certainly not likely to listen. I determined that they're a credible authority for myself. Yeah, much more so than a year or two ago. And I think the opinion makers have done this to themselves. Now, to use one example, remember we did that video about the Celine Dion's satanic clothing line for kids? How can a person see that and not like take a step back?
I know.
Another person will look at that and say, "You're imagining it. She's just making fun of herself and bringing magic clothes to the kids." And that's all they're going to see.
For normal people, though, they'll see something like that and say, well, because I was always the person, you know, there are YouTube videos where people are like, oh, well, Rihanna used like a triangle in her video. That means she's a Satanist. I always thought that was comical. I always thought that was silly. But now when I saw the Celine Dion thing, I'm like, wait, maybe there's something. Maybe it's not like, you know, Rihanna music videos or whatever, but maybe there is really a cabal dedicated to corrupting children. It seems a lot more plausible to me these days.
And it's not too far-fetched that these kind of stuff, because you could just look at like Maria Abramovic, you know, and her weird satanic rituals.
A funny thing, I was watching a Seinfeld rerun recently, and I realized they kind of made a sideways reference to Marina Abramovich, but they didn't mention her by name. But yeah, George said that he was like going out with this, you know, crazy occultist performance artist.
Well, you know, that's not surprising that many of those TV shows do actually throw out those kind of like covert messages. Family Guy actually did that with what's his face, Harvey Weinstein.
Yeah. You
remember that scene? Like Stewie runs out after being perverted by Harvey Weinstein. That was a message telling him, like, this guy's a fucking pervert.
They also did that with Kevin Spacey, where he had kids locked up in his basement. So
yeah.
Neither Max nor I are fans of Seth MacFarlane, but he knows more than he lets on about what goes on.
I'm not saying I don't really care about Family Guy, you know.
Yeah.
I really used to be a Seth MacFarlane fan. I really liked Family Guy its first few years. I see now how it actually did contribute, like South Park, which I also still like, but it still did kind of contribute to the coarsening of the culture. But there was a flip sometime after 2012, especially, I would say. But even a few years before that, and Family Guy became just nasty. And hateful and very atheist, very anti-Christian, but just nasty in other ways. And yeah, you started the sex stuff got weirder and weirder, and there's a lot of stuff. Anybody go through on YouTube and look at search up Family Guy future scripting, or what is the phrase people using? I mean, Family Guy has come out with a lot of stuff. You know, they film they do their animation months before, and they do their scripts and finish their shows months before they're aired. And just so many weird things will happen on Family Guy around the same time they're in the news. And it's not just one or two, and it's not, and you know, it's quite a few.
Well, the Simpsons is notorious for that, but yeah.
The Simpsons too, yeah. But Family Guy, I think even more so. Some of the stuff I've seen, a lot more explicit too, you know, making you wonder, of course, if MacFarlane or people on his staff are actually getting tired of the evil that's among them. Because you mentioned Owen Benjamin. I love Owen Benjamin. I listen to him all the time now. I think more people should listen to Owen Benjamin. You don't have to believe him on the moon landing stuff. But at this point, again, I'm going to repeat my work. Right? I can't laugh at what anybody believes anymore, because I've seen firsthand. I spent years as an investigative independent journalist, and the stuff I saw is unbelievable. Then I did men's rights activism work, and that was unbelievable. And no, the press lies about everything. They lie to you in school just about everything. They lie to you about your own history in school. They lie to you in school and in the media about things I remember that I was there for. Like, hey, you remember this one, Deflating? I don't know, maybe you're too young, but you remember how America rushed to war with Iraq on a wave of fundamentalist Christian desire to destroy Muslims, and that's why we went to Iraq?
Well, that was
never even part of the conversation. Yeah. Not really, huh?
That was the talking point of the left from the very beginning.
And now it's fun is what happened. I've even heard it out of mooks like Sargon of Akkad that, yeah, America went to, Christians wanted revenge on Muslims.
Yeah.
That is not how Iraq went down. I mean, I'm not even saying it was right to go to Iraq. That's not what I'm saying at all. At all. What I'm saying is that's a lie about what happened.
Well, that was the irony, and in some ways, I see the new atheist movement of like 2005 onwards as kind of a correction of the absurdity that these leftists who were in no way accommodating of religion, who had no high opinion of religion, were suddenly blaming like September 11th on America's foreign policy. So
yeah, that was really weird.
I kind of saw like the Sam Harris New Atheism as kind of a correction where suddenly the left gets more in line with criticizing Islam, but then of course Sam Harris gets dumped in with the alt-right by the liberal, even though he's not conservative in the least. But yeah,
well, here's the thing: the new atheist movement, like Christopher Hitchens, Richard Dawkins, and Sam Harris, they were essentially like, basically leftists, intersectionalists, and progressives. The thing that caused them to fall out of favor with the progressive left was that they started criticizing Islam, and for some reason, leftists see Islam as all brown people, even though there's a lot of white people who are Muslims.
And I see it the other way around. I have believed for the longest time that the agenda has been to bring Muslims in here, and of course bring the Muslims in who are going to be the most unruly and most uncivilized and most unable to cope with a modern civilization, with the specific goal of using uprisings and violence from the Muslims as an excuse to repress religion and Christianity and religion in general. I think that's part of the actual plan. And frankly, I've seen that out of Harris, and I've seen that out of them. I think they're out of favor because they're old and irrelevant now. They were brought in by social justice leftists for a purpose, and they are no longer useful, and they've been cut loose.
They weren't importing Muslims like from Lebanon or what's another country that's like
Libya or something.
Yeah, exactly. Or they were importing them from like the most impoverished areas in the world, like Somalia, and expecting them to integrate, and that didn't work out. And I do agree that some of the anti-Islam stuff can get a little too extreme in itself. Like we see what's going on in China with the fact that they threw over 1 million Muslims into like gulags, and it's just crazy. I think that's example what not to do, and where we should kind of draw the line and show moderation. Especially like in Europe where it's like highly secular, because I don't know, that could happen. I'm not a big Islam apologist, but it is what it is.
Hey, Brownies in the comments. Thank you, Brownies. Remember the phrase I was looking for: predictive programming. Just for fun, sometimes go into YouTube and type in Family Guy predictive programming or Simpsons predictive programming. But Family Guy predictive programming especially, because some of the stuff that's been on Family Guy the last 5-6 years, and some of the stuff that wound up in the press later on, awfully good. Some of it you could call some of it you can certainly call coincidental, but by the time you're done, it really looks fishy. And you see, and there's a lot in the so-called conspiracy. Not that I want to be a spooky conspiracy theorist, but no, in conspiracy theory circles, which you shouldn't be afraid of conspiracy theories. That's my point. That's why I was making that joke. Predictive programming is believed to be something called Operation Mockingbird and other things have been using for decades, that basically the powers that be are planning certain events to happen, and kind of will make up science fiction or future tales that talk about what's actually going to happen, so that we're kind of getting used to it, and we're already kind of pre-prepared to accept these weird things. Called predictive programming. So that's just something to look for. Yeah, so we've been going about an hour. Should we wrap it up, or I could go another half hour if you guys want to.
I'm up for anything. I mean, it's fun.
Yeah, well, I think we're all more primed for weird events, and we're all more primed to accept weird ideas. Whether that was part of some design or something, I can't say. But yeah, the world has gotten weirder, and I'm less likely now to believe anything from the press, and I'm more willing to entertain the ideas that they don't want me to entertain. So maybe this is some weird reverse psyop. I have no idea. Maybe they're the ones who are playing a 17-dimensional chess.
Well, there is the thing in the end. I mean, and I do come down to this one as a Christian. Ultimately, God's in charge, and the devil's running the world, or much of it. And so we are. It's funny. We clasp desperately to glom onto what we think are facts and an understanding of the world. But each of us as individual human beings is way more limited than we want to be. I mean, we could be totally wrong on this show. All three of us could be fooling ourselves into thinking that, there are no Russian bots and letting us believe that Vladimir Putin didn't hack our elections. And we're just, how do we really know? It's based on the sources of information we use.
Well, that was the thing. I interviewed the guy behind Walk Away, and then they still tried to tell me it's all Russian bots,
Oh, yeah.
Well, here's the thing.
I know.
I do think that I do acknowledge that, there are foreign actors like Russia and China that hire bots to, spread their bullshit. But it's like, come on. To some extent, there's a wide variety of influence that they do not have. So,
yeah. Well, of course they try to. Every country tries to interfere in elections. The Saudis gave Hillary Clinton like $100 million or something crazy like that. Is that not election interference?
Yeah, and also, do you not remember what was it, the 90s when there was something called Chinagate, which basically the Clintons were leaking military information to the Chinese Communist Party, and it was actually a major scandal, but it got hardly any news.
Oh, and guess who had backdoor access to Hillary's private email server? It's the Chinese during a period of time when CIA assets in China were all being killed and imprisoned. Boy, isn't that a coincidence?
I tell you what, man. One of the things that's happening in politics that people don't understand is that there has been a wing of conservatism that has felt out of the cold since at least the early 1990s. And they are best represented, I think, by Pat Buchanan. And I notice a lot of even current, so-called conservative activists, writers, pundits aren't giving him his due. Because if you read what Patrick Buchanan was saying in the early 1990s, in the late 80s, when he was running for president, and the books that he put out, he was hated by the conservative establishment, including William F. Buckley Jr. eventually kind of just threw him away. But he was starting to say in the late 80s and early 90s, China's the real enemy. And he was especially saying it in the early 90s. China is trying to take us over. China has taken the Panama Canal. Chinese corporate interests are buying up all these properties. And what he called the neocon element was, which was a lot of Republicans in the 90s and the 2000s during the Bush era, who were saying any question of corporate takeover is questioning free markets. Any questioning of free trade is questioning liberty. And Buchanan was the guy, the conservative, who was out in the cold saying these people are full of it. And, who else from that time period was the same was Ross Perot. And
yeah, the thing of it is,
what Donald Trump is doing 20 years later. I mean, a lot of political commentators said that Barry Goldwater and a guy named Brent, when he ran for president in the 60s, was what eventually got Ronald Reagan elected. And a lot of people believe that Pat Buchanan's failed presidential campaign and Ross Perot's are what eventually led to Donald Trump. Because if you look at who Trump is, he's very much a Pat Buchanan type thinker. He's very much a Ross Perot type thinker. And
I was going to say, I was going to say that. Oh, I was just going to say that. A few people know about this battle, but all throughout the 90s and on the eve of the Iraq War in 2003, there was actually this this internalized battle within the Republican Party between the paleo-conservative faction, which was led by people like Patrick Buchanan, and the more neo-conservative faction, which was led by people like George W. Bush and Max Boot. And throughout, most of like from 2003 onward up to about the 2016 election, the Republican Party was dominated by the neocon faction, and that increasingly fell out of favor due to the Iraq War and all the fiascos that caused, and the fact that people were losing jobs due to free trade, quote unquote.
Yes.
And so now what we see is a return of we see what we see is a return of paleoconservatism under this Donald Trump administration.
Yeah, what I heard, and I can't speak knowledgeably on the subject, but as soon as Trump was the presumptive Republican candidate for 2016, a lot of the neocons actually jumped over to the neoliberal side because they had more in common with neoliberals than they did with a populist nationalist.
Yeah, you saw that actually. Max Boot, he essentially became a Clintonian, like SJW leftist. If you don't know who he is, he's like this neoconservative shit stain who wants to attack Russia, wants to attack Libya, wants to attack North Korea all at the same time. And when he was when Donald Trump became the president or was nominated for the Republican Party as the presidential candidate, he jumped ship to the Democratic Party, as did Ralph Peters and a bunch of other John McCain, a bunch of other neocons, because they essentially just like want war in markets. That's all they want, which is more in common with the neoliberals.
Yeah, so. Yeah. I remember like those Seattle riots where they were protesting against globalism. But nowadays, the Democrats would call all those people fascists. That's the ultimate irony.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
a book I might recommend just to understand. See, there's the thing too, because still even the conservative media establishment doesn't get it. Pat Buchanan is the guy to read. It doesn't matter whether you like Pat Buchanan or Trump. If you want to understand how these people think, he's the guy to listen to. And you're probably going to see more writers like him coming along because there's an awful lot of people who are seeing things this way and actually always have. Another one to look at, he's hated by a lot of people, and I sure don't agree with everything he says, but Vox Day. You listen to Vox Day. Every time I say Vox Day, somebody thinks I mean Vox.com. No, that's a uber lefty, progressive, trendy BS publication. Vox Day is a man, Voxday, and he's a publisher, and he's a writer, and he's a conservative, I would actually call him an idiosyncratic conservative, but he's quite influential and insightful.
Max, you know the YouTuber Blonde in the Belly of the Beast?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, she opened one of her videos with a big clip of Pat Buchanan, and I just kind of all made sense at once for me. I'm like, what they're so afraid of, what they wrongly call the alt-right or the alt-light or whatever you want to call it, is basically the medium of the internet, is basically the innovative social media. But what they call this, radical right, alt-right or alt-light is basically your dad's conservatism in a new form through a new medium.
Yeah.
So it was the conservatism. I mean, when you look historically, the party that was the most non-interventionist when it came to foreign conflicts was the Republican Party. The Republican-controlled Congress during the time of Woodrow Wilson voted against the U.S. joining the League of Nations because they believed that it would get us involved in all kinds of foreign conflicts, and people were just tired of the First World War that we had just entered, and we wanted to go back to kind of like the Monroe Doctrine, where we weren't going to interfere with the old world countries. And historically, when you look, most of our wars were started by Democratic administrations: Wilson, FDR, Truman, Lyndon Johnson, Vietnam, and I mean, historically speaking, my point is that historically speaking, the Republican Party has been the party of non-intervention. It's only until relatively recently, with the rise in neoconservatism under the Bush administration, that we see this more hawkish foreign policy.
This is another thing where my views have evolved, because I was not and am not still in principle a nationalist. I was not and am not still a non-interventionist. But when I see what the globalists are willing to do to assume and to hold on to power, I want none of that.
Yeah, look at Libya.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the victim of globalism and intervention in Libya. I mean, they have open slave markets now.
For me, yeah.
What I've heard, I don't remember who he was, but he was some intellectual wag, was saying that it's not globalization per se that people oppose; it's globalism as a philosophy.
Yeah, the concept of McWorld.
Yeah, and that's because which still puts us in accepting that globalization of some sort is inevitable. It seems like what the world order is going to is that nationalism is coming to the fore. And I guess you could say that titularly I'm on the nationalist side because it's obvious who the bigger enemy is. But, a world order dominated by hyper-nationalists is also a world order that is maybe being primed for more wars. Nationalism isn't always an unalloyed good, but
I agree.
Yeah, it's like when I look at it now, I got no choice.
Well,
right? Same here. I mean, I'm not a big fan of nationalism either.
I know what the globalists want to do to me.
Yeah, this is what I see. I mean, if the basically corporate neoliberal nationalist left basically wants to try to subvert democracy by illegally spying on a presidential candidate, if they want to use these astroturf movements to create chaos in the streets with the aim of destabilizing society, if they want to use weaponized immigration to try to dissolve our borders by force, I immediately want to reject that. If that's what they're willing to do to grab onto power, just imagine what they'll do when they actually have power. So that's the way I see it. So
we already saw it. We already saw it since basically like 2000.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you're opening up a can of worms there, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, 9/11 was a terrorist attack, but the way the Bush administration used it was.
So you do think that, because see, I'm also on the I'm not laughing at anybody anymore. I've been going back and looking at 9/11 truther videos with a second eye because I don't believe anybody anymore. I really
open too, but like I do.
I happen to know there's going to be a grand jury has been impaneled. The 9/11 truthers have managed to get a federal grand jury impaneled, and are going to be bringing a lot of their evidence forward. That's just happened in the last couple weeks. So I don't know. You might wind up talking about 9/11 again in the coming year or two.
Interesting. It's just like going back to nationalism. I agree wholeheartedly. I mean, I'm not a big nationalist guy either. In fact, if you look at the history of nationalism, it was actually a product of the far left during the French Revolution. They because many of the regions in France and really Europe as a whole were so decentralized, they had to come up with a concept that would unite the country.
Yeah,
and that was nationalism. So, but I understand that nationalism now, and civic nationalism, which is far different than ethno-nationalism, that's entirely different.
Yeah. Lamprey Mills suggests that borders will be destroyed. We will be reverting back to religion as identity, Max. That's an interesting idea. That I don't see borders going away. I really don't. I mean, they're clearly going to be porous to goods and such, but borders are likely to change. But I mean, they're going to harden. I mean, so I don't necessarily disagree, but I do agree that a religious identity is going to become more and more and more to the fore. It has to. I was going to mention this earlier, but since you mentioned it, I do think religious identity is very much going to come to the fore. One book I strongly recommend anybody reads who's a doubter is The Triumph of Faith by Dr. Rodney Stark, who is a professor of sociology and has hundreds of publications, peer-reviewed and popular to his name, completely respectable. And he will tell you that we've already and arguably entered the post-secular age. It doesn't seem like it because the secularist globalist media is very anti-religion. But in reality, humanity today in 2019 is more religious than it was 20, 30, 50, 100 years ago. I mean, I can give you a number of facts, but like church attendance, weekly church attendance in the United States is as high as it's ever been, and is about as high as it was in the 80s. It hasn't gone down. Hating Christians has gone up. So casual observance of Christianity has gone away to a large extent, but those who are still faithful, they're as numerous as they ever were, at roughly 25% of the population in the U.S. In the meantime, atheism continues to plummet as a percentage of the population, and paganism is exploding, but on the growth. Islam is growing. Christianity is actually growing. In fact, Christianity is growing in Western Europe. Christianity is growing in the United Kingdom. Christianity is growing in France, although it's evangelical Christianity mostly that's growing, and Pentecostalism. And this is in Western Europe. And it's not just that. You know, Hinduism is exploding and growing rapidly in India, and it dominates their politics. And, you know, contrary to the myths that we're told that Japan is very secular and not religious, that's completely not true. When asked if they are religious, most Japanese will say no, because they don't believe their religion is a religion. Because Shintoism is like 80–90% of the population. It is just an everyday part of life. More than 90% of Japanese houses have Shinto shrines in them. Something like in a recent survey, something like 70% of the Japanese had been to a Shinto shrine or ceremony within the last year, average of about 3 a year.
Don't they also, like, whenever a new corporate building is constructed, they do like some kind of Shinto ceremony to,
whenever a new corporate building is made, there is always going to be a Shinto priest to bless the thing. It's just not done otherwise. But not just a corporate building. If you build a house, if you get a mortgage or transfer ownership, like part of the closing fees will list things like the lawyers, the accountants, the bankers, the priest who put the blessing on the whole thing, and there'll be charges on that on your mortgage agreement. And it's just not done for you to say, I don't want the priest's blessing.
Yeah.
It's just embedded in life there. In fact, once you learn about Shintoism a little more, you realize a little bit about Japanese culture and why they're kind of immune. The Shinto religion actually holds that the world was already here when Japan was made by two gods, a god and a goddess in their lovemaking, and they kind of pulled the islands of Japan out of a sea that was already there. And they view Japan as a whole as a separate creation of these special gods, and the people there is special and set above, aside from the rest of humanity. That's part of the Shinto religion. And if you get that, and all of a sudden, like, oh, and it kind of suffuses every aspect of society. Everybody does Shinto ceremonies for everything: birthdays, weddings, holidays, special occasion, retirement parties, getting a new job, graduation, whatever. It's all Shinto, Shinto, Shinto. And when it's stuff about death and dying and the afterlife, they're going to Buddhist shrines, which is part of the Shinto tradition. So they're actually,
I was going to say too, also in Asia, there's a huge religious revival going on too. In China, they have not only just a religious revival of traditional Chinese religions like Falun Gong and Taoism and Buddhism, but they also have a Christian religious revival. Christianity is growing there in China, and in countries like Mongolia, Tibet. I consider Tibet separate, and Cambodia. There's Buddhism is coming back and thriving. So I don't think religion's.
Yeah, but
identifying themselves first by their religion will become a thing again. But the thing is you're going to see that puts you in conflict with nationalist elements. You even say, country first, religion second, and that's going to be a problem for some religious people.
I mean, the Chinese government is certainly willing to use authoritarian measures to suppress.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that. This is despite the repression.
Yeah.
If China could simply divest itself of these authoritarian elements within its own government, The 21st century could be pretty rosy, in my opinion, if it could get all the religions squashing out of it and all the all the communist measures and abuses, which would actually not be a difficult thing to do, in my opinion. It's going to be the Chinese century, so I mean, a Christianized China would be a wonderful thing to have, presiding over the 21st century.
Well, yeah, and it could work too because China has a history of plurality, and if you have like a plurality of religions, China has Buddhism, Islam, Christianity, Taoism, and they could all relatively coexist for most of its history.
The most intolerant religion, of course, is atheism. So
yeah, which is repressing all of them. Just ask the poor Dalai Lama who had to flee in 1959.
We just got maximum atheist triggering there. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure, yeah. I mean, watch a good movie called Tibet, or not Tibet, Kundun. It shows the horrendous repression of Buddhism in Tibet, and to the point where they were shooting monks and forcing Buddhist monks and nuns to have sex with each other to humiliate them.
Oh yeah. And those are all, and I will repeat it, those are all done in the name of I'm against religion. Those are all done in the name of religion is bad and holding back society. In other words, they were done in the name of ideological atheism.
I was going to say, Mao said to the Dalai Lama that religion was poison.
Yeah. Religion is bad. I hate religion. That's what they were using to justify these atrocities. And I wish more atheists would just acknowledge this when they say that stuff. Just say, yeah, but I mean, I would never be, whatever, guys. Just acknowledge that it happens. It makes me so crazy. Atheists who are against religion often commit these horrible atrocities. If you are against religion, religious people have a reason to look at you and say, well, how far does your against religion go? Anyway, we should start wrapping this up, guys. Any final thoughts you want to get out?
What Robert described sounded a lot like the kind of sexual blasphemies that were used during the French Revolution.
Oh yeah, they did that too. They also,
Jude, go back and look at that train wreck on Bill Nye with sex junk, and the woman talking about, and they had this cartoon on Bill Nye the Science Guy with a white vanilla ice cream cone,
ice cream orgy,
who did not want to mix it up with the other races, and if you watch this cartoon, they gang rape him.
Yeah, essentially.
And it's like that's a repeat of what you've seen. People with this ideology in communist and fascist regimes do. It's so crazy. I mean, I have literally read about forced gang rapes like that with somebody who has the wrong attitude or the wrong beliefs, and yeah, forcing nuns and priests to rape each other and killing people in the killing fields. All done in the name of eliminating primitive religious superstition and being rational and caring and compassionate instead. I'm sorry, but we're talking about other things, but I will never stop confronting people who tell me they're anti-religious with this reality that people who talk just like you, irrefutably just like you, do these atrocities. And as a religious man, I'm allowed to notice.
And also going back to what Deflated said, I'll give you guys a little history lesson. During the French Revolution, there had been a Catholic uprising actually in the Vendée region, and it was horrendously repressed to almost near genocidal levels. But one of the things they did, the anti-religious authorities did during the French Revolution, was that they tied two lay and clerical Catholics together, a man and a woman, naked, and like drowned them in the rivers and seas. And also, so that's my history lesson. Also, in even though it's not exactly atheistic, but kind of relevant now, the Nazis, when they seized power, they actually began something known as the pedophile priest campaign, where they would try to discredit the German Catholic Church as like being a ring of pedophiles. And so I think, I'm concerned about the pedo issues too, but I think it's
actually. Would you shoot me a reference on that? I believe you because I'm 100% positive, based on the best data, that is what is going on now with Catholic priests. Not that we don't have guilty priests, but there is a witch hunt. Because I'm going to repeat it, the secular school system, school teachers juvenile prisons and secular foster homes have 100 times worse a problem, and they're covering it up. The media is still covering it up while they're obsessing over the Catholics. It's not okay. Not that it's okay what's happened with the Catholic priests either, but that's another topic. We'll have to do a show on that.
I think Hollywood has like some really degenerate shit going on there.
It's one of those things where they want to point at one thing so that you won't look where the biggest problem is, because the biggest problem is not in the Catholic Church, guys. It's not in the Catholic Church. That's not where most of the rape's happening. But anyway, Deflating, did you have any final thoughts?
No, I'm good. I think we ended on a good place there.
All right.
Yeah, it was talking about politics.
All right. Everybody, please go subscribe to Deflating Atheism's channel. Everybody, please let people know about the new channel. I already said at the beginning of the show why we're doing this. I've explained it quite a few times. The old channel wasn't even our original channel. It had been an emergency backup channel because we've been chased out. We've been chased around with so much censorship. That old channel was not well organized. It had been shadow banned in so many places. It had so many. We thought it was time to start fresh. Plus, we're starting with a new attitude. We're going to be a little less provocative, a little less mean. Not that we'll stop being provocative or mean ever, but we're going to try. And we're just going to try and turn over a new leaf and see if we can fit in with YouTube's new, terms of service, at least for now. And we're still investigating other funding platforms. Patreon is a disaster at this point. Subscribestar, we're waiting for approval. We were going to make the Discord chat room only for patrons, but we can't do it anymore because fundraising's in the air. But please give us your support as best you can on redpillreligion.com. Bitcoin donations and PayPal donations are especially appreciated. We're here every single night. And so we'd like to get to 500 subscribers. How fast can we get to 500? Let's see what help we can get for that. So please give us a like. Please give us a subscribe. Hit that bell. Tell your friends or enemies. And God bless everybody.
God bless.